Hi everyone, in this video I'll talk about the suspension and handling of the KTM 250 Adventure. Please note that the inferences made in this video are formed after riding the motorcycle for a little over 2 years. So let's go back to 2 years ago when I was riding the Suzuki Gixxer 155. As you all know, it's an entirely different motorcycle with different riding triangle and dynamics altogether. The wheelbase of the Gixxer is 1335mm, whereas the KTM 250 Adventure has a wheelbase of 1430mm. The overall height and the seat height of the KTM were considerably higher for me, and there was some getting used to adapt to the new bike. Let me be clear that I had no issues with the seat height and putting my foot down. Enough of the stories. Let me talk about the suspension first. As many say, the suspension is on the stiffer side and it can hit you hard at times when you're navigating potholes and such, unless you're standing up on the foot pegs. I did notice that if you adjust the preload and fine tune it, the suspension can behave a bit differently and can be a bit smoother. Also, when there is a pillion riding with you, the suspension feels way better and not at the expense of handling as well. Coming to off-road conditions, while standing up, the 250 Adventure soaks up bumps quite well. I have not done any technical off-road sections, but I did go for a few off-road rides and the suspension behaved well and was not unpredictable in nature. And since I mentioned off-road, I would say that there isn't enough torque on offer to keep up with the 390 Adventure on off-road terrain, and you require a lot of feather in the clutch. When you load up the motorcycle with a top box, the suspension feels a tad bit different. However, when you load up the saddlebags, it felt quite similar to the normal stock settings. When you're comparing them both, the saddlebags make the suspension more predictable than the top box. On the corners, if you don't panic and slam on the front brakes, the suspension won't be an issue. I've mentioned the front brakes specifically for a reason, and that's because the front suspension has a habit of diving in when you apply the brakes, and in the initial stages, you will need some getting used to for the long travel suspension feel. On corners, if you don't brake properly, you can lose the front of the motorcycle. That is, if you are not careful and panic brake, as I mentioned before. I've also noticed that if you are tightening up the rear suspension, the bike feels amazing on corners. Coming to handling of the motorcycle, once you get used to the bike, this is a delightful one, to be honest. Initially, you'll feel like it's a tough motorcycle to tame handling wise. However, it's not the case. Let me elaborate a bit. If you're coming from a street sport or even a normal commuter, you'll find the bike clunky to begin with, and you'll be yearning to get your bum back on the old bike. I used to reserve this bike entirely for longer rides and absolutely hated it on twisty roads and for city rides handling wise. Then I decided that I must learn how to ride it instead of running away from it, and that is what I did precisely. Once you figure out the center of gravity and how to sit and position your body on the motorcycle, you will find it enjoyable on twisty mountain passes. But don't expect the easy flickability like the Duke series on traffic-laden roads, as it's simply not possible due to the bike being longer and the other attributing factor being the wide handlebars. But those wide handlebars feel good in counter steering for me personally, and while you're cruising on the highway. When you're creeping in on traffic, be careful not to hit other motorcyclists as the handlebars are wide and tall. Is it as good as motorcycles with shorter wheelbase and lower center of gravity? The answer is no. But is it more than enough to keep up with those motorcycles on the road during twists and turns? Oh yes, absolutely. If there is anything that limits the smooth handling of the bike, it would be the MRF rubber. It just can't handle fast turns, and many a times I ended up feeling a lack of grip, and luckily I felt it only on the rear tires so far. On the rain, the tires felt even more unfriendly on bends. So, to sum up, once you get used to the bike, you will feel at ease on the handling front and you will know how much you can push it. That's it for this video on suspension and handling. See you in the next one. Stay awesome and ride safe.